I heard you Sunday morning on with Mac and Mac, and you had some high praise for what the Eagles did in last week's draft. For people who didn't hear, what do you like about the DBs they selected in rounds 1 and 2, Mitchell and Didinger?
Two really, really good players. I mean, they were on my draft board where I rate the players and stack them by position. They were my cornerbacks, number 1, number 2. I had Mitchell number 1, and I had Didinger number 2, and both of them ahead of the 2 Alabama kids who are good players. Arnold is a good player and McKendry is a good player, but I thought that Mitchell and Didinger were better than both of them. And, for the Eagles to come away from the draft with both of those guys is pretty slick work by the general manager. I thought that, that's the high point of the draft, but there were some other things he did, being able to move up and down the board, stockpile some additional draft picks for next year, and still come away with some of the players that he came away with. It was a very, very good weekend for Howie Roseman and the Eagles.
Well, Ray, let's jump down to the third round. Jalix Hunt, an edge from Houston Christian. It goes into one of those deals. I guess if you could play, they're going to find you. Yeah,
that's exactly right. If you can play, they'll find you. And that was looking back on the draft, looking back on the whole 3 days. If people were to ask me, was there anything the Eagles did that had you scratching your head a little bit? That would probably be it. I'm not sure, at least by my grading system, I didn't have Hunt as a second-day pick. I had him. I certainly thought he was draftable, but I thought he would be somewhere in day 3. I didn't expect that the Eagles would grab him in the 3rd round when there were some other really good players on the board. But I've talked to a couple people since then, some people whose opinions I respect, like Brian Baldinger. I've seen Daniel Jeremiah, who I think is a very smart guy, talk about it. And they both felt that that was right about where Hunt should have gone. I mean, they didn't. To me, I thought it was a reach, but some of the other people who really know this stuff didn't think so. So we'll see. I thought that, Howie made the statement after the pick was made that they view Hunt as a developmental player, a guy that, you talk about, he started his college career at Cornell, where he didn't play all that much, and then went to Houston Christian, where he played a lot but didn't play against anybody. So it's a little hard to evaluate the tape with him. But, some of the real professionals think that his combination of his size, his speed, and his athletic ability make him a viable 3rd-round pick. So I thought it was a little high, but we'll see. I mean, he's going to have an opportunity to come. Listen, the Eagles, Hassan Reddick is gone, and Brandon Graham this is probably his last year. Josh Sweat, there was talk about trading him. He's back, but who knows for how long. The Eagles need players who can get pressure from the edge, and this kid will have an opportunity to show what he can do.
And then, of course, in the 5th round, a pick that we thought was going to, happen earlier for this young man, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He lasted until round 5. A lot of Eagles fans wanted him in the 2nd or 3rd round. Eagles got him at pick number 155. Is he a player? We know he's going to be a fan favorite because he's Trotter's son, but can the guy play?
Oh, yeah. Yes, he can. He's not that similar to his father. In fact, he's very different than Trot Sr. Jeremiah Sr. was a 245-pound force in the middle of that defense. I mean, and Jim Johnson used him really well. Playing downhill, attack the line of scrimmage, blow up the A gap, run blitz, run blitz, run blitz. I mean, Jeremiah Sr. was almost like a 3rd defensive tackle in that defense, and he was very good at it. Jeremiah Jr., I think a lot of folks who haven't seen him just kind of think, well, he's going to be exactly like his dad. And the fact is he's not. He's very different. He's much smaller. I mean, Junior is a shade over 6 feet tall, probably 220 pounds. But in today's NFL, that's what they call the off-the-ball linebacker. That's kind of your will linebacker. And that guy his job is to make plays all over the field, play sideline to sideline. And that's what Trot Jr. does. That's what he does really well. I mean, if you look at his stat line at Clemson, he fills it up. I mean, tackles for losses, sacks, passes broken up, passes intercepted, passes returned for touchdowns. He's all over the field making plays. And, I think he's going to be a different kind of player than his dad. But for an Eagles team that clearly has to rebuild that back seven of the defense, I think he's going to get an opportunity to play. And I think he's going to play well. I mean, Chet, you said it. I mean, he's going to be an instant fan favorite. I mean, one of the things that the fans all talked about happily after the draft was, oh man, we got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I mean, there's already excitement about this kid. Just serendipitously, the Eagles do not have a 54 on their roster now. So he can walk right into that number, which I think he will. And I think that given an opportunity to play, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to come in and play really well.
Hey, Ray, one pick that really surprised me that he was still there in round 6 was Johnny Wilson, a wide receiver from Florida State. He was thought early on last year to be an All-American type of player. He had a bad case of the drops there for a while. But why did Wilson drop down so far? My first question. And second question, 2 wide receivers in the draft when you would think they're kind of stockpiled at wide receiver.
Well, the kid from Texas A&M, the Eagles needed a slot receiver. I mean, they're pretty well set with the 2 outside guys. I mean, Brown and Smith, you're good there.
Right.
They're really good players, and the Eagles have locked them both up on long-term contracts for big money. And they should. I mean, they're that good. But they really didn't have a slot receiver. And, the Eagles play, like most teams now, they play a lot of 11 personnel, a lot. I mean, with 1 running back, 1 tight end, and 3 wide receivers with a slot receiver. And they were hoping that Quez Watkins would be that guy, but that never really worked out, and Quez moved on. So they really had a need there for that particular guy. He's not going to take minutes away from Smith or Brown, that's for sure. But they need, if they're going to go 11 personnel, which I think they will, they're going to need a slot receiver, and that's what they were looking for. So that made some sense to me. And Wilson is Wilson just had a really disappointing year. I mean, he's an intriguing prospect in that he's 6'6.5", 230 to 235 pounds. Played mostly wide receiver, but he's had a weird college career. He started out at Arizona State, was a big disappointment there. He got down on their program. The coaches got down on him, so he transferred to Florida State and played better. But he still is, and Bill, you said it, he's just very inconsistent catching the ball. I mean, he drives you crazy with dropping the ball. He makes big plays. Like last year, he had 22 catches of over 20 yards, which is pretty good. I mean, that put him among the upper echelon of those kinds of receivers in college football. But, for every one of those big plays he made, there was a play where he was wide open, just dropped it. Just a matter of concentration. I mean, guys can get over that with practice and better work habits. So I think at that point in the draft, that far down in the draft, I don't think the Eagles were necessarily looking for a receiver, but probably he represented the best value on the board at that point. So they'll bring him in and give him a chance to make this team.
Hey, Ray, let me get back to Cooper DeJean for a minute. They took him in the 2nd round. A lot of people thought he would be gone well before that. He can play pretty much anywhere in the secondary. He can return kicks. His coach says he could play offense if they needed him to. Where do you see the Eagles using Cooper DeJean?
Everywhere. Everywhere, in a word. He will he did in high school, and even some at Iowa, he did play all over the field. He did play some offense. He did return kicks. But his real future in the NFL is on the defense. And the question is, okay, where everybody knows he can play, but where do you play him? And if I were to guess, I mean, there's no guessing with Mitchell. I mean, Mitchell's going to come in. He's going to be the other corner opposite Slay. And he's going to be, in my view, really good day one. I mean, I think he's going to come in and be really good right away. I mean, week 1, he's going to be starting. And I think he's going to be very good at it. DeJean, I think, is going to be a wonderful tool for the new defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, because he can play corner if he has to. He can play in the slot. He's very good in there. And he's really good at safety. I think that's where he's going to wind up. I think ultimately he's going to wind up being a safety because right now, they're pretty thin at safety. I mean, they have C.J. Gardner-Johnson has come back, which will help. But that other safety position was kind of a mismatch all last year. And Cooper DeJean, I think, can come in and solve that right away. He's and listen, if you watch the draft, a lot of teams drafted with one eye on the new rules changes on the kick returns. I mean, they've changed the rules now to bring kick returns back to the NFL. And so a lot of teams were drafting guys who could return the ball and also drafting guys who can cover kicks, because now your coverage guys are actually going to have to cover. I mean, for the last few years, the Jake Elliott's of the world are just kicking the ball into the stands, and the other 10 guys just run down the field, do a little wind sprint, turn around and go to the bench. Who cares if they can tackle or not? They're not asked to. Well, now they will. So teams, I think, especially day 3, were drafting with an eye on getting those kinds of players that can help them in what's going to be kind of a new era of special teams play.
Hey, Ray, we don't want to skip Will Shipley, but I want to get to something else first. Tyler Keegan, guard out of Michigan. Dylan McMahon, a center out of North Carolina State. They go get, I'm going to hope I get this right, Mekhi Becton, 6'7", 364-pound, former first-rounder 2020 from the Jets. Tyler Steen last year, Cam Jurgens. Where does all these guys fit in? Are they going to build depth, or are they concerned about that center and right guard position? What do you see kind of bringing all these guys in, and how's that going to sort itself out?
Well, this was the first year in several years when the Eagles had to actually look around for offensive line help. They had that front 5, that group that was so good for so long, and they had pretty good depth behind it. Well, now, Jason Kelce has retired. Great draft pick by ESPN to get him for their Monday night show. I think he's going to be sensational. But he retires. And Cam Jurgens, who actually played pretty good at right guard last year. I had my doubts, but I thought he played pretty good. But he's a natural center. So he's going to move over, and he'll be the center now. So right guard is pretty much wide open. Sua Opeta, who was here for a couple of years as a depth guy, he's gone. Jack Driscoll, who was a pretty good swing guy, could play both guard and tackle. He signed with Miami. So, I mean, they were dangerously thin on the offensive line. And so that's what I think that Keegan and McMahon represent. I mean, they're late round picks, but they're the kinds of guys that, Jeff Stoutland is such a good coach that you take a couple of good, tough guys who have played a high level of college football. You bring them here and you hand them over to Jeff Stoutland, as the players refer to it, Stoutland U, and let him work with these guys. And, I think that one or both of them will probably work their way into the starting lineup. I really like Keegan. I mean, he played as a 4-year starter at Michigan, playing a high level of college football. Anybody that watched that Michigan team over the last couple of years, you saw how good their offensive line was.
Yeah. And
I thought he was the best of them. So to get him where they got him, I think that was really good. I mean, he'll come in and compete right away for that right guard job. Tyler Steen, who was a pick last year, will probably get the first crack at it by the virtue of having been here 1 year. But I think Keegan is going to push him for that job. And, somewhere along here, he's going to be part of your front 5. I mean, he's just too good a player. Right now, he's probably represents some depth, but he's too good a player to stay on the bench. You take a guy like that and you give him to Jeff Stoutland, you're going to have something.
Or Ray, before the draft, of course, the Eagles made several moves, comings and goings, none bigger than Saquon Barkley finally becoming an Eagle. I like the guy when he was at Penn State, of course. He had a pretty good career with the Giants when he was healthy. What's he going to bring to the Eagles offense?
I think a lot. I know that there's some debate back and forth about, whether he's really that good, whether he was worth what the Eagles gave up to get him, worth what they're paying him. But I think yes. He played well for the Giants, and that offense and that offensive line didn't help him a whole heck of a lot. I mean, if you watch the Giants on tape, their offensive line play was at the near the bottom of the NFL. I mean, they kept trying different people, and and they just couldn't. They just weren't very good at it. And Barkley still had some really good years. Well, coming here, he'll be running behind the best line he's run behind since he was at State College. And, I think that even though he's said all the right things and he's been a real gentleman about the way he's handled this stuff, which is his nature. I mean, he's that kind of a guy. There's certainly a desire on his part to kind of show people, that, in a different situation with in a more complete kind of offense, I'm going to show people that drafting, taking me as the second player in a draft wasn't a dumb idea, and I think he's going to come here. You'll never get him to say that, but I think he's coming here with the idea that he feels like he's got something to prove. And in Philadelphia, playing behind that offensive line, he's probably going to be able to prove it. So I was a little surprised that they did it. That's the Eagles don't normally make that kind of a investment in the running back position. But when they did, I thought good for them, because I think that, he's going to help them running the ball. He can really catch the ball. His rookie year, he caught 91 passes. And the other part of it, and this is, sort of people don't think about this, but he's a very good pass protector. And he's really good picking up the blitz. And anybody that saw the Eagles down the stretch last year, all the problems they had picking up the blitz, a lot of it had to do with the fact that the running backs that they had last year just couldn't do it. Well, now you got a running back that if he's asked to pick up a blitzer, he can do that in addition to all the other things. So, yeah, I think Saquon Barkley is going to come in here and have a real positive impact on this team.
And that leads us right into Will Shipley, the 4th round draft pick to go in that running back room. They kind of cleared that room out and added Barkley and Shipley. How do you see him fitting?
Utility man, can do a lot of different things. Probably projects as a third down kind of guy, catching the ball out of the backfield, returning kicks maybe. I mean, he can do that. Spell Barkley from time to time. I have a feeling that Barkley's going to be on the field a lot. I don't know how many snaps Shipley's going to get, but he was a good player. He was a good player at Clemson, and I mean, not a superstar. I mean, if you watch him on tape, he's not a guy that's going to get. He's not a guy that's going to break a ton of tackles. He's not a guy that's going to get you a whole lot of yards after catch, but he'll catch the ball and he'll move the chains. And also, again, like we were talking about a few moments ago, in a year when special teams are probably going to be back in play, he'll be able to help you there, both as a coverage guy and possibly a return guy. So, yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think Boston Scott will be back. Doesn't appear that way. So right now your backfield it's basically Saquon Barkley, Kenny Gainwell, and Shipley. So he'll be in position to play a lot, I think.